the man who had forgotten the names of trees. Often one can't remember where titles, at what stage of a poem the titles came in. I think this came in fairly early. And the reason behind it was that I realized how memory gets battered and goes, because my father was a timber merchant, and at one time I had the idea of going into the forestry service. And so I knew a lot about trees, and it suddenly occurred to me one day that I couldn't anymore name very few trees I could recognize, and it just shows how memory had become battered. So that's where the title came from. I don't quite know the process. The man who had forgotten the names of trees. I'm not ashamed of dying, nor of arguments with the sea's skin that are quickly resolved, nor of ignorance of the ancestry of unlikely fish, teeming where the rocks wedge the cold currents, stem their appointments with dissipation. No, I'm not ashamed of dying. A woman I met in a sad garden, when the moon had 3 rings and the wind smelled of great horses, told me her secret name, but left me before I had learned its distant origin. But bending over a fire, nourishing flower with fierce hands, smuggling her wisdom past the guards in sailor suits and dog collars, she inherits a world of incense and the reek of cordite. Whenever an anticyclone dawdles in January and soil returns to rock, the morning air to water, and I am not amused, I look for her in the mist. And there she is. Sometimes only a shadow like a moth or a postman. Sometimes a faraway song that smells of rags, scrape of a worn shoe, brush of a velvet cuff on my cheek. Bracing myself as the earth rolls, I lean against the north, look into a sky gone blue for the coming of wistful birds. And there she is. Her secret name is an hour-long kiss. To return to where I wasn't, I see a man with a gap-toothed rake in the hayfield, numbed by the pain of fragile monotony, glancing from time to another time, up to the idle park and the great house on the hill. The armourers are wiping their hands on their aprons. The banker is smiling. No, I'm not ashamed of dying. It's 10 to 10 in the Grey Horse, and the majority are only drinking out of habit. It's hardly the high spot for bacchanalians. The barmaid's indifferent, beer undistinguished, and a thin man in the corner is having a fit. If it were a postcard, or a particular kind of painting, when the village clock struck the appointed hour, the men would drag themselves to their cottages to sleep under the thatch, where the women dream of an ocean of hollyhocks. But the man with fits sleeps in a flat above a garage and has no coins for the meter. He is dying quicker than most of asbestosis and his inheritance. Come to think of it, he may be luckier than some. When I am thrown out, I pause by some graves and listen for a warm sea and birds that have no roost. The shore swarms with white crabs that click when they scavenge under constellations that would have confused Babylonian astronomers. They have to make a living too. Tall, skinny trees bend to an incessant wind. What's his name is nowhere to be seen. His wife snores under a sapodilly, gorged on its rough-skinned fruit. Tonight, I prefer mountains. Stumble ashore with a machete to hack a pass through the sea grates and the poisonwood thickets to the pampas. Having no fear of gauchos, I rope a passing horse. The horizon enlarges. The agonies of a city are bypassed, and a breeze that tumbles from the west dispels the groans of childbirth and gamblers. Some way ahead, I can hear a great silence and spur the horse towards its springs. I sleep in a pillaged tomb. I've clean forgotten to tell you that before I waded to the shore, before we even smelled the land and watched the changing of the birds, we passed a rock shaped like a sunfish fin, but blacker than a raven's beak, and all alone and weeping with the seas that broke on it like a metronome. You'd think they'd find a handier spot to stick such a pestilential rock. Just when you think the ocean's clear, no land to give you sleepless nights, some rage in the body of the earth thrusts up a putrid boil like this to break ship's ribs, asphyxiate all hands. I knew a man in Southport just like that. The trees marched down the mountains like a Tartar horde, spears waving, a billion shining shields flickering in the sun, crisscrossed by shrieking birds, and in among the horses' legs run packs of rabid dogs. Actually, it is quite quiet in the forest, and cool. The air has the warm scent of disintegration, sweetness of decay and fungi. The streams are wick with eyes and lined with listening ferns. Some of the silence has trickled down from the mountains, but there is a crackling of beetles, and farther than nearer, derisory monkeys. Alas, how is't with you that you do bend your eye on vacancy, and with the incorporeal air do hold discourse? Too bloody true. I wonder if she watches now, perhaps from the branches of that thing that breaks the sky and shit white with the droppings of loose birds, that sing their angry songs and wing off at the crack of frost. Soft as their down, perhaps she's watching from those rocks, or from the fog pinched from a passing cloud, or that puny stream tickling like reprocessed beer. I should have drunk much less last night. Though I am deafer than a pope, I hear her singing in the reeds, and in the morning mist beside another river, and the parrots fly gilded in borrowed light above the aspirations of the trees. I hear her busking in the cold angles of the streets, singing of superannuated leaves, and why she has a pact with death she dedicates to all her children, all those who walk in shadows, through the doors of pain and penitence, and such like ordinary things that string the harp, make glass the necklaces of queens. Arbuthnot Lovely loves to say, when in another's cups, that dying is an absolute way of drowning those who live in yesterday. She whispers something in his ear, something too true to mention here. The seas arrive on time, visit the creeks like farmers on market day. The moon as multinational as jeans or beans, as constant as the chant of guns. Skirts rustling through ripened wheat, she walks towards her waiting car. A wind moans through a scrawny bush, carrying her scent and a plover's cry, gathering ash from a tinker's fire. Once in the embers of a tiresome day, when starlings gathered for their autumn flight, she came and told me how the smoke of time curled round the 7 hills, and how the ferryman stood patiently beside his boat, whistling out of tune, and, smiling like a drunken clown, asked if she'd pay by credit card. She has a mite of tales like that. She tells of burning in the fire at stakes on funeral pyres, in ovens not designed for bread, of all the silences condoned by holy men and latticed windows of harems. Her silver laugh shines like a nacre shell. Once, on a hill above a field of rape, as yellow as a lollipop, she sang a bitter song of wounded knees and calloused hands, and how a patriarchal God just condescends. Then she smiled, patted my arm, offered me her sea-blue eyes. She has the power of water, strength of sky. Last night, when all the gowns lay in their piles, the night air dripped its dew and rats played their accustomed roles, she rustled through the pale-faced streets, danced round me as I wove to home. She knows my desperation's in the blood, my heart a weak spring clock, my feet drag down the road, but I still grin at my shadow and three-headed dog. The sun rode up. The streets began to patter. Vans arrived to empty, fill, and newspapers came out, and she went picking in the opening shops for fruit and flour, sugar and brass, pig's knuckles and perfumes. She shimmered through a rising tide of those who passed with vacant eyes.